Finn was almost ready to leave the rehab centre. Suddenly the school holidays became hanging around in Arrowland helping out. Kylie had opted to spend the whole 2 weeks with Kath and Finn, but all I wanted to do was to be with Chrissy. But that was not to be. Family duty called again. I don't want to go to Arrowland. I lodged my complaint at dinner the week before. Can't I stay here? How long do I have to keep doing these things? For Christ's sake, I'm 18 next month. Do not take the Lord's name in vain, Tom, was all Gran had to say. He misses you, mate, was Brendan's comment. And, Tom, it's important you see Finn, was Dad's contribution. I didn't hear anyone say, yeah, Tom, you've been good, you can have some time out. Mum kind of smiled and shrugged, but that was piss week. Great, I mumbled. Tommy. Dad's face went serious, and I started to regret opening my mouth. The old man was about to call it like it was. Finn needs you, even if it's just to keep him up to date with the rest of the world. I'm spending 2 weeks with him, Kylie said. I'm quite capable of keeping him up to date on world activities, if that's what you think he's really interested in, Dad. You know what I mean. It's different. You're a girl, Mum bravely said. Excuse me? Kylie spat. What is that supposed to mean? I'm sure Finn wants to hear about Tom's football, what his plans are for Nepal, what his mates are... His girlfriend, Kylie mouthed at me as Mum kept on. How Matt and the boys are, the game of St. John's. Okay, Mum, Kylie groaned. We get the picture. It's our responsibility, Dad said. It's as simple as that. I hated thinking of Finn as a burden. I knew it was like giving up on him. It was just such hard work. If I were him, of course I'd be moody and pissed off too. He had nothing to smile about, absolutely nothing. But the fact was, I did. Worse than that, I was actually happy. It was hard to wipe the smile off my face. I'll miss you, Chrissy said the night before I left. But you have to go. I groaned. Not you too. Talk to him, Tom. That's like saying talk to a rock. Well, have you tried? What, talking to a rock? Tom, she slapped my thigh. I'm being serious. No, I shrugged. I haven't. I'm usually concentrating hard on not talking to him. Well, not talking to him proper like. You spoke to Matt. You were dreading that, but you did. And you're still breathing. It's different with Matt. You're there for a whole week, she reminded me. Nothing to lose. Gee, thanks. Now that's going to be bugging me the whole time I'm there. Good. We were lying on her bed. Her mum was at work and Brendan and Johnny had gone to the club. You haven't changed my mind. I still wish I didn't have to go, I moaned, because that was how I felt about leaving her. Lying next to her was almost more than I could take. She was so beautiful, her long leg curled against mine, her foot rubbing up and down my calf. I ached for her, and she seemed to feel the same. Sometimes when we kissed and touched, I'd hear her make a little sound with her breath, turning me into a legless, dribbling, mute lump of jelly. I couldn't get enough of her, the way her hair smelt, the touch of her fingertips along my spine, her laugh, her eyes, her smile, her bloody everything. We hadn't done it. Talk about self-control, but it just never seemed to be the right time. There was always her mum or Johnny about to get home, and the cave was hardly the most romantic or comfortable of places, with my squishy single bed. I was a virgin. She wasn't. But I wanted it to be perfect, like it was her first time too. It'll feel like my first time, she said to me. I've never felt like this with other boyfriends. This is new for me too. I want to feel like this forever. Auntie Kath had decided not to go back to Mum Billy. Being a small town, it didn't have the facilities she needed for Finn. With the money out of the sale of her house, she'd bought a ground floor unit in Arrowland, near the beach, with a little garden out the back. She'd had to have it fitted out with railings and ramps, pull-out hoses in the bathroom, and strange lifting machines that looked like mini cranes. Walking around her lounge room, examining all the contraptions that Finn now needed for the most basic things, like having a shower or eating, still felt completely unreal to me. Maybe you never got used to it. Finn was still living at the rehab unit, but more and more he was coming home for weekends. I guess it helped him to get used to their new place and helped Kath get used to him. It's like having a baby all over again, I heard her telling Kylie while Dad and I watched the league. I have to do everything for him. Will you get some help? The community sisters come each day, but I'm the one here 24/7. Is he excited about getting out of rehab? He's terrified. Silence. Anyway, Kath's tone changed. It's so nice to have you here for the holes, and it'll be even better in summer with the beach down the road. Do you think you'll be here for good? Kath sighed. Probably, Kyles. It's easiest this way. There seemed to be 2 activities for the week. Sitting around the rehab unit talking to Finn and some of the other blokes, or unpacking boxes at Auntie Kath's place. Dad and I were like the handymen, hanging pictures, assembling shelves, changing light fittings. You name it, we did it. Kath and Kylie were on a cooking frenzy. I reckon they froze a year's supply of dinners. If they weren't in the kitchen, they were out shopping. They'd come home with arms full of bags, mostly new clothes for Finn. Everything had to be simple to get on and off, Kath told us. No tricky buttons or zippers. Kath bought new blinds for every room and a Barbie. That meant more jobs for the old man and me. Putting together the gas barbecue required the brain of a rocket scientist, and even together Dad and I didn't come close. One time, I noticed Dad stuffing the receipts in his pocket. "Are they for this stuff?" I asked him. Dad kind of mumbled something. "Are you paying for all of this, Dad?" "Some of it." "Bullshit!" Dad threw up his arms. "You're paying for all of it, aren't you?" "Well, what am I meant to do, Tom?" "Did you buy her this place?" "As if. I'd hardly be able to scrape the deposit together." He looked at me, and I knew he was reading my mind. "We have no choice. It'll be years before they see any compensation." "Yeah, but it's like buying her off." Dad shot me a look. "Tom, we'll never be able to repay the debt. So what we can do, we'll do. We're family, and I'm doing my damnedest to keep it that way." "It's never going to end," I mumbled. I went back to cleaning the windows, the debts sitting in my guts. One day, when there wasn't a cloud in the sky, I picked up Finn at the rehab centre and took him for a walk. Well, I walked, and Finn sat while I pushed his wheelchair. "It's electric, Tom. It'll work on its own." "I like pushing it." What I really meant was, it's easier talking to you when I can't see your face. "Does it remind you of the billy cart races we used to have?" he asked me. "I'd forgotten about them." "Dan always made you push the billy cart back up the hill. Remember?" Finn said. "By the time you got to the top, you'd be purple and sweating like a pig. Then I'd jump in and hoon down." "Yeah." I could almost hear the wheels skidding down the tar road. "At least you pushed it back up after your go." Jeez, Daniel's whine. He did anything to avoid hills. I hated the way he made us go up for him. Bossy shit. And then, without being able to stop myself, I said, "He's not doing much bossing around now." Finn didn't say anything, and I couldn't see his face. After a while, he groaned a bit and said, "Fuck, I hate this." I put the brakes on his chair and sat on a park bench. From where Finn and I were, we could just see the ocean meet the horizon, blue upon blue, which was what our families had become. Sad, angry, guilt-ridden, confused, lost. Blue. Or, for some of us, black. "I don't hate him," Finn whispered. "I know you think I do, but I don't." "I couldn't blame you, Finn, if you did." Silence. Finn sighed. I started to crack my knuckles one by one. "I got another postcard from Claire," he said. "Where is she?" "Spain." "Nice." "You know we'd been together." I nodded. "I really liked her. She really liked me too." He cleared his throat. "Kylie blames herself, but she was just trying to help out. Daniel was really hassling Claire for a while, getting really paranoid. I was so close to pounding him a couple of times." I turned to look at him and said, "Maybe you should have." "Too late now." He stared straight ahead. "I'll go and see him, you know. Soon, maybe. I mean, he was like my brother." We were, the three of us, like brothers. Now it was hard to believe that. Blood's thicker than water, so what's the difference between your brother and your cousin? I didn't know. I'd never know. I just knew being here with Finn hurt, and probably always would. That's why I longed to be with Chrissy. It wasn't simply wanting to touch her, it was different to that. It was being away from this crap, the pain of the family, escaping Finn and Daniel and Kylie, all of them. When I was with Chrissy, I was me again. Simple Tom Brennan. No ties, no debt, no guilt, no bad thoughts. Just me, the way I'd always known myself. Through all the shit, I hadn't really had a moment to pinpoint what I missed the most. Was it the Billy and my mates? Was it Mum not being Mum? Or Finn, Daniel and me, and the way we used to be? But now I knew what I missed the most. I missed me, Tom Brennan, and that's why now I could smile, because I could see that he was coming back. The last week of the holidays, I came back to Cog Hill, and Brendan and I got stuck into building the chook pen. Kyles was still in Arrowland with Finn and Kath. One night she rang home and told us he'd had a big freak out. She said she wouldn't come home until he was settled at the flat, and she knew he was going to be okay. They seemed so tangled in one another's mess. After she hung up, I heard the oldies have a whispering spat in their bedroom. "It's a big responsibility for Kylie," Mum had said. "I don't want her missing school, and there's Tom's birthday coming up." "That's in a couple of weeks," answered Dad. "I know," she almost shouted. "We're not going to forget about it like we did last year. She'll be well home by then. Nobody wants to miss his birthday." "Yeah," I nodded to myself, thinking what a top bloke I was. "Tess, it'll only be a few extra days. Kath promised," Dad said. "She's sure he'll be settled by then." "And what if he's not?" Silence. Then Mum again. "I know she's up to date with her schoolwork, but let's face it, Joe, she's been battling. Just look at her hair. She hasn't settled the way Tom has, even though she tries to make out she has." "Tess, I know all that." Dad's voice got a bit louder. "What are we meant to say?" "No, our daughter can't help Finn. Our daughter who is physically capable and..." "Enough!" "Well, how can we?" Silence. "We have to think of our family too." Then Mum sighed. "It still worries me the way Kylie wants to be so involved with Finn and his recovery. I mean, you'd think..." I crept away. They didn't know the burden Kylie carried, and they never would. Maybe this was her way of making it up to Finn. Maybe Finn asking that she come was his way of giving her that chance. Whatever the reason, it was a journey Kylie had to take. Brendan and I had mapped out the chook pen in the old part of the garden. It was blissful, that last week of the holidays. Chrissy and I hung out together, while around us the chook pen began to materialise. Chrissy had a good brain for practical stuff. I was seriously deficient in that area. "How many chooks are you going to get?" she asked me one arvo as we measured and cut the wire. "Dunno," I answered. "What do you reckon? A few hens and a couple of roosters?" "Tom, for starters, you only have one rooster," she laughed. "You'd cause big trouble with two. They don't share well." "Fair point," I nodded. "I wouldn't share you with anyone." "You don't have to," she said, and I just about stopped breathing. "I suppose I'll have to share you with Brendan when you go to Nepal." I screwed up my face. "I wish you were coming too." Chrissy threw her arms around my neck, giggling in my ear. "Hi." It was Mum with some drinks. You could hear the ice clinking as she walked. "Thought you guys might be thirsty. It's warm out here and it's only just spring." "Thanks, Mrs. Brennan," Chrissy said, taking the drink from her. "How's it going?" "Pretty good, thanks, Mum." "Do you think Mrs. Healy suspects anything?" Chrissy asked the old girl. "God, no." Mum waved the idea off. This'd be the last thing she'd expect. Besides, she never comes down to this part of the garden anymore. No need. I poured the drink down my throat. "Thanks, Mum." I handed her back the cup, giving her a time-to-go-now look. "Well, be careful cutting the wire." "God, she's thin," Chrissy whispered as Mum walked back up to the house. She was thinner. And pale. Sun-tanned compared to even a few weeks ago. "Did she really not get out of bed?" "Yeah," I answered. "I mean, she'd get out to piss and stuff, but after Daniel went away, she pretty much only got up to visit him." "That's awful." It was weird. It got to a point where I felt like I hardly knew her anymore. She didn't look like Mum. She didn't smell right. I shook my head. It was pretty bad for a while. But you know what's weirder? Now she's up and getting back to normal, it's kind of hard to remember what she was like then. "That's probably a good thing," Chrissy said. "My dad used to say the sign of a healthy mind is someone who can get over it and get on with it." "Nah, I reckon it's because I sort of didn't see her as a person." "What do you mean?" "Well, I saw things, not her. Like the greys in her hair or the way her breath stunk and the room smelled of piss and BO. Once I walked past her room, she was out to it and the sheet had slipped off the bed. All I saw were her toenails. They were so long they'd curled up on the ends. It was the most disgusting thing I'd ever seen. Well, not quite." "Do you think she'll be okay?" "I hope so. It's made a difference, especially to Dad." "I bet." "I'm a bit nervous about next week," I told her. "It'll be the anniversary. 1 year since the accident. Feels like about 1,000. Will you do anything?" "Hide. I'll hide with you." "Matt told me Mum Billy is having a big service in the bush where it happened. There's like a memorial there where people put flowers and stuff. You won't go?" "I didn't even go to their funerals." She nodded. "I've never been back there. I mean, to that spot." I heard my voice shake. Too scared. Chrissy lay on the grass next to me. She picked up my hand, linking her fingers through mine. We stayed like that for a while, looking at each other. "What are you thinking about?" she finally whispered, her lips brushing against my palm. "You're thinking bad things, aren't you?" "Tell me, Tom." I was thinking about the ghost gums and the way they looked that night in the bush. The headlights on Dan's car were shining on them. It was like their silver trunks went all the way up to the stars. "You must have been so scared." "Beyond scared," I swallowed. "You know, Finn thanked me the other day." "Did he?" "He said, 'Mum told me you stayed with me all night, that you wouldn't leave my side.' And then he said, 'Thanks.'" Touching his hair, sticky with blood, whispering to him, "It's okay, Finn," were my last memories of the Finn I knew. "What else?" I looked at Chrissy and shook my head. "Please, Tom," she squeezed my hand. "I need to know these things about you." "It's strange, the things you remember." "The taste in my mouth as the dawn came," I started. "It was that dirty sock taste you get after a late night. I was so thirsty. I remember that really clearly, in my eyes and my head, the way they ached when the sun started coming up. It was a brilliant orange ball and the clouds were so pink. And of course Finn, his voice and his scared little eyes as they came from the car." I swallowed hard. Fuck, why am I talking about this? "'Cause it'll always be with you," Chrissy whispered to me. "You've got to talk about it." "Why me? Why us?" I don't ask that anymore. I used to feel like that when Dad got sick and all the other fathers would be at the netball except mine. "Yeah? Yeah," she smiled. "But you get used to it." "And you know what?" I said. "You get sick of feeling bad all the time." The chook pen was finished. We bought 3 hens and a rooster, and on the morning of Gran's birthday, September 9th, we blindfolded her and let her outside. Kylie wanted to spin her around as well, but I said that was overdoing it a bit for an old lady. "Where are you taking me?" she hollered. "I don't like surprises." "Come on, Carmel," Dad chuckled. "Have a bit of faith in us." "Jesus, Mary and Joseph, I can't breathe through this scarf." "Mum, your nose and mouth aren't covered." "Teresa, you know I don't like enclosed spaces. I think I can feel a panic attack coming on." "Gran," Kylie squealed. "You're outside in the open." "Maybe you are, girlie, but I'm in the dark behind this. Da-da, Brendan sang as Kylie pulled down the blindfold. "Happy birthday," we shouted. Gran stood there, her mouth open. My, she finally said. My. What do you think, Gran? Kylie laughed. Do you like it? Gran looked at me with mist in her eyes. Then she winked. She walked towards the wire. Brook, brook, she crooned. Brook, brook. She opened the gate of the chook pen. Brook, 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 brook. She knelt down, picking up the rooster. Brook, brook. She smoothed his feathers over and over. I think I'll call you Harvey, she crooned, because St. Harvey was famous for his miracles. Suddenly the rooster squawked, giving us all a fright. Oh, be quiet, Gran scolded, or you'll be named Benedict, patron saint of bachelors. See how you like that, young man. The fellas were hassling about a party for